Hi guys, welcome to today's lesson on John chapter 5. So today we're going to look at some people who are stuck. They are stuck in their life circumstances and they need a way out. And so as we open the scriptures today at the beginning of chapter 5, we're going to look at the first gentleman who's stuck in life. The scripture tells us he's a man who has been an infirm, an invalid for 38 years. Now, that word can mean feebleness of mind, feebleness of heart. It can mean moral frailty. It can mean sickness. It can mean disease. We don't know what his specific issue is, but he's with a great many other people at this pool of Bethesda. It's found right in Jerusalem by the sheep gate, and people believed it to have miraculous healing power. So when the waters moved, the first one to make it into the pool received their healing. So here he is on this day. He's laying at the side of the pool waiting for his healing, and Jesus shows up. Now we know that when Jesus shows up, he has an agenda. He has an itinerary. He is looking for a specific person. And as he scans all those sick people, the blind, the lame, the paralyzed, he hones in on this one man. Now, we have no idea why, out of all those people, he chose that gentleman, but he did. So he goes up to that gentleman and he says, "Do you want to get well?" See, the verse right before that says Jesus knew his condition, knew how long he'd been in his condition. Now, for Jesus to walk up and say, "Do you want to get well?" That gives me pause. I'm thinking, Jesus, of course he wants to get well. That's why he's there. That's why he's been laying there. But is the answer that easy? Is the answer that easy to our lives, the places we might find ourselves stuck in life? Think as we go into this, where is an area of your life where you feel you're a little bit stuck? Maybe you already know. Maybe you're one of those, like I was in the beginning years, you're super stuck. No one has to show you the places of your weaknesses, your infirmities. You already know. Maybe there's just certain areas where you're like, Lord, I don't think this is flourishing like you mean for it to flourish. So keep that in mind as we look at how Jesus addresses this and what he's saying to us. So when Jesus says, "Do you want to get well?" could it be best case scenario that he is trying to elicit faith out of this gentleman? He wants to spur this man on to believe that today is the day you are going to get your healing. Or is it something a little deeper, something a little more problematic? And Jesus knows there is something in us, though we wish we want healing, are our hearts ready to be healed? Let me explain. Sometimes when, like this gentleman, he's been in his infirmity for 38 years. Could it be that he actually found his identity in his infirmity? That became who he was. He's the invalid man who doesn't work, doesn't take care of himself, and just lies around by this pool hoping to get well. What about us? Our dysfunction, our sin, our brokenness, our just inabilities in life, our past, have they become our identity? And the thought of getting well actually scares us, because here's the thing. We can become so familiar in our weaknesses, in our sins, in our dysfunction, that it doesn't matter how bad it is. It's what we know. It's what we're familiar with, so we're okay with it. The thought of getting well sounds nice, but you know what? It's actually more of a threat than it is a freedom for us, because we don't know it. Could it be also that when Jesus offers him the ability to get well, that means his life is going to change, and that means he's going to have greater responsibility. Like one commentator brought up, beggars of this time, they can make a good living. This man hasn't had to do anything for 38 years to make a living for himself. As bad as this situation is, it's comfortable. It's easy. He has no responsibility but to lay there. So sometimes we gotta kind of wrestle with that idea with ourselves about getting well. Do we truly want to get well, as Jesus poses the question? So here it is. He poses the question to the invalid, and this is the man's response. It starts in verse 7. Sir, the invalid replied, I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I am trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me. Well, those sound like pretty good reasons, don't they? It sounds like he has some pretty legitimate excuses for not getting well. Do we have some really good excuses for not getting well? Some really good reasons that we give ourselves, we give God, we give our families, we give our friends, the world, why we must stay stuck in whatever place we're stuck in, and why we can't get well, why we can't change, why life can't be better. Somewhere in this, friends, I want to bring this up to you. Somewhere in this, when we stay stuck for so long in some kind of pattern of brokenness, in some kind of pattern of dysfunction or sin, whatever it is, somewhere in that, we are giving ourselves permission to be that way, to be in that state. Somewhere in here, this man allowed himself to stay the same for 38 years. In my own case, I found myself years ago just very hardcore difficult with my children, with my husband, with everyone. My place of being stuck was in my behavior, in my character. I was very difficult to live with. I had a terrible anger problem. I yelled terribly. And I knew I was wrong, but I had my buts. Do we all have our but and then we give our excuses? But if the kids wouldn't do that, if Dave, my husband, would only do this, if those people would only fill in the blank, I had but, I have my reasons. I have to be this way because of. And what's funny is, God kept dealing with me. And one day, I do not remember watching this show, honestly, ever. But for some reason, one day, I saw the Dr. Phil show. So you know how many years ago this was. I see the Dr. Phil show, and like is normal for his show, he's dealing with people with dysfunction and chronic behavioral problems. And he finally says to them, somewhere in that, you give yourself permission to do that thing. You give yourself permission to act that way. And I was stunned, because up till then, I thought I had to be this way. This is how I had to act because these things were happening. And when he said that, I give myself permission to explode in anger. I give myself permission to yell harshly, critically at my children. I give myself permission to treat my husband terribly. It was like a revelation to me. And I had to dig in and I had to work with the Lord to stop giving myself permission to do those things. I mean, all of our journey is going to look a little bit different. I mean, there's resources. You might be stuck in a sin where you got to go to a 12-step program. You might be stuck in a program where a problem where you're going to have to go to a counselor. I mean, there's many different resources, and you can even look at my website. I posted a few of the resources. I had to take in a lot of reading. I had to read a lot of books about just how to do life well, how to treat people well, love well. I had to listen to like practically every tape, videotape, TV program, minister there was, because I had to keep feeding on what do I do, because what I'm doing isn't good, and if I gotta stop giving myself permission here, I gotta know what to do. So we do have to add in what to do. So here's the interesting thing. Let's move on. So he gives his excuses, and then look what Jesus does. I love Jesus. Jesus doesn't bat an eye. He doesn't even address it. He just goes on to say, get up. Pick up your mat and walk. At once, the man was cured. He picked up his mat and walked. Okay, let's break that down a little bit. First and foremost, when Jesus shows up, he is not interested in our excuses. He is interested in our wholeness. He is interested in our freedom, in our getting well. So what does he do? He gives the command, get up, pick up your mat, and walk. Immediately, that's the Greek word eutheos, immediately, the man is cured. Now that Greek word cured, I love it, means the man was made whole. That's what that word means. That crippled man was made whole in that instance, even before he stood up, picked up his mat, and walked. I wondered if, as I read this, he's like in Mark chapter 5, that woman who had suffered with the blood issue for 12 years. Mark tells us immediately when she touched the hem of Jesus' robe, immediately she was healed. You see, we just got to go to Jesus, because whatever our situation, he has the cure. He has the wholeness. He has the freedom, right? And so Mark in his gospel tells us that when she touched it, immediately the blood flow stopped. And I want to get this right. She felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. Is that, I don't know, is that what happened here? Because John doesn't go into detail, but this is what we do know. He picked up the mat and walked. Immediately, he was made whole, and he did it somewhere in that. Jesus just didn't have the authority to make him whole. He had the authority to say, hey, when Jesus told him, get up, pick up your mat and walk, it's on the Sabbath. And Jesus was basically saying, you break the law per the religious leaders, and you pick up that mat and you carry it. Now, he would have stood out like a sore thumb. Everyone would have seen him carrying that mat, and they did. The very next verses are like, hey, whoa, dude, what are you doing carrying that mat on the Sabbath? You're breaking the law. And this brings us to the second group of stuck people, the religious leaders, the leaders in Jerusalem, the Pharisees. They were stuck in their culture. They were stuck in their traditions. They were stuck in their rites and their rituals. They were stuck in their mindsets. They were stuck in the way they'd always thought, and they couldn't get past it. Here was this man made whole after 38 years, and they could not see the beauty of that. All they could see was that this man broke the law. That's how stuck they were. And Jesus is going to go to them and set them free as well, or he's going to try. So here it is. He goes to, this is going to start, he is going to start on verse 16. By the way, I didn't mention this, and it is worth mentioning, and it might be why the Apostle John wrote about this particular healing story, because it's not in any of the other Gospels. Jesus tells us in verse 14 that he found the man at the temple sometime later. And he goes up to the man privately. Notice he didn't do it out in the open where the others could hear. He said, see, you are well again. Stop sinning or something worse may happen to you. In this gentleman's particular case, his sin, and we can presume on this, probably assuredly, that he had some kind of ongoing sin that he knew was sin, and his suffering was a direct result from it. But you notice it didn't stop Jesus from healing it. So whether our suffering, our place of being stuck is due to our own actions directly, or someone else's, or life, or the world, whether it comes from us or not, look, Jesus is right there willing to heal. So we don't have to be all guilt and shame ridden. He was willing to go heal, but he, in love, he was also willing to tell this man, hey, you need to stop because you're inviting something much worse. Now, the only thing that commentators came up with that would be worse than being stricken with an affliction for 38 years as this man was, he probably lost his salvation or never had it. The point is, Jesus is letting him know, separation from God is what would be worse. So we need to pay attention to that and go, Lord, is there any place that I'm not connecting rightly to you? So let's go on. So here he is. Jesus is always willing to meet us in our brokenness, in our dysfunction, in our sin, in anything, you name it. We invite him in. He's there with us to help us through it, to help us overcome it. Okay, so here he is. He shows up to the Jewish leaders because they're all, confronting him. And what I love about this, because Jesus often gets in these tussles with the religious leaders, because they don't like that he is provoking them. He is breaking their laws and they don't like it. But you know what? Jesus isn't satisfied with that invalid being stuck in his infirmity. And he's not satisfied with these religious leaders being stuck in their legal mindsets because he wants to set them free also. And here's the thing. The thing that is the biggest problem with these religious leaders is they are the ones who are assigned to help the children of God know their God, connect to their God, understand his ways, and they're not doing it. In fact, they are giving a horrible representation of who God truly is, of what his love truly looks like, of how his ways are, of how to understand his word. And Jesus needs to correct them on it. He needs to set them straight because you know what? They're already outside the kingdom for all that they think they've done right and are inside the kingdom. In love, he's letting them know, no, you're not. No, you're not. And so he is going to come on the scene and he is going to give them a fourfold witness to himself. Now understand this. In the law, you can find this in Deuteronomy chapter 19. It starts at verse 15. When testimony needed to happen, when a matter needed to be established, it was established on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. Well, Jesus is going to come in and he's going to give the fourfold witness to himself. Now think, that's what he did with Lazarus. When Lazarus was dead and Jesus and his disciples were given that news and they were like, come down and help. Jesus waits 4 days. Why? Because the Jews believed that the soul of a person hovered around the body for about 3 days. So Jesus couldn't go. Do you think the disciples were going nuts? Like, come on, Jesus, we got to get down there. We got to get down to Judea and raise Lazarus before it's too late. And Jesus is like, nope, 4 days. Because after 4 days, they would be able to see the miracle. They'd be able to see the power of God at that point. It wouldn't be the power of man. It wouldn't be Lazarus just coming back into his body, raising himself. No, they'd see the power of God. And so that's what he's going to do here, because they're questioning his authority to do what he's doing, to say what he's saying, to be who he says he is. And so what does he do? He shows up and he tells them, it's starting down, look at go down to 33. So his first fold witness of himself is John the Baptist, verse 33. The next one is his works, his signs and his wonders, verse 36. God the Father, verse 37. And then the scriptures, verse 39, right? And they're the Old Testament scriptures because he's actually living out the new ones right now. And he is saying to them, saying to these religions, listen, you study these meticulously, looking for me. They are the ones that speak of me. Moses pointed to me. David pointed to me. Isaiah pointed to me. Elijah pointed to me. The law, the prophets, the history, the poetry books, they all point to me. And I am standing before you, the very author of life, the word made carnate, and you do not believe me. In fact, he tells them these very things that testify of me, you won't receive. He tells them in verse 40. Look at verse 40. He says, yet you refuse to come to me to have life. And it's verse 42 that gives us a little glimpse into why. Because the love of the Father wasn't in them. So it wasn't that they didn't have the opportunity. So to get well, to get unstuck, it's that they refused Jesus's offer of life. They refused his offer to get well. Well, what about us? What about our lives and our situation? Is there a place where Jesus wants to come alongside us and help us get well? Are we willing to take his offer? Can I just tell you, friend, he offers it to us as we do life with him, as we're in his word, as we, you know what, we probably will need other resources. That's why I named them a few earlier in the video. Whatever your situation looks like, they're gonna look different. But as we probably need some very mature advisors to come alongside us. We're going to need people to help us, but he offers it. And I want to leave you with this last little thing, because I, of all people, know how scary it can be to get well, to only know one way of doing life, and to step out and to grab the Lord's hand and allow him to deliver, to change, to transform us into something that we don't know. So one of my stories was God had spent this time working these really ingrained habits in me. It's what I knew. I only knew to find fault. I only knew to be critical. And then I only knew to address it angrily and with yelling and fighting. I only knew to fight. So he works all this time to work this out of me. And I just want to assure you, I write about some of this in my blog. I thought I was going to die. It is so hard when those things from childhood, they're so ingrained in your thinking, and to work with the Lord, to have those transformed out, you betcha it's hard. Please hang in there. Please keep working with it. Don't give up. Keep showing up. Keep doing what you have to do. But then the day came, and the Lord put on my heart, okay, Lisa, now we're in a season where I'm going to grow you in being healthy in your relationships. I'm going to create in you healthy connections with your children, how to nurture them well, how to love them well, how to connect well with them. Now that all sounds great, doesn't it? Except it's something I never knew. It was so unfamiliar to me. I was beside myself with fear. And so one day, as I'm driving to pick my kids up from school, I'm like, Lord, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think I can do it. And well, first of all, right, we never do it on our own. He's always there holding our hand. But I was so afraid to get well. I was really like in tears. And so I called this mentor friend who she was fabulous, and I needed wise counsel. And I called her. I said, could you just meet with me for a few minutes before I pick my kids up from school? I really need your advice. And I went in and saw it, and I dumped it all out. And I said, am I crazy? Am I crazy that God is building this thing in me? He's transforming me into something wonderful. He's building these healthy connections and unity and nurture and goodness with me and my kids and my husband and my home. And yet I'm scared to death of it. And she goes, no, it's normal. It's normal and it's okay. And I thought, I'm going to have the courage to do it anyway. I wanted to get well. And you know what? I just partnered with him, and I did it afraid, but I did what I had to do, and I let him work in me his love, his character, and it grew over time. Remember, I keep telling you in my different blogs and videos, it's a one step at a time process. And I just let him hold my hand, and I let him show me what that looked like. And I'll tell you, friend, to this day, this is years later, I am blown away at the health and the wholeness I have today that I never had. I did not grow up with it. I did not have it in my early adult years, but God can do it. And he offers it to you too. If you want to get well, he has a plan for you, and he will meet you right where you're at if you're willing. Oh, be willing. Be willing. That is my prayer for you. You will go after everything he has for you. I hope that helps you today. You know what? Reach out to me if you just have any questions, concerns, or you need prayer for something. I'm here for you. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.